Okay, so again, starting with starter, we have just gotten it to evaluate the responses and record whether or not the response was correct or incorrect in the log file. And that's all working great. So now it is time to give feedback to the participant based on whether their response was correct or not. Now, you don't always want to do that in a study, but you do need to know how to do it because sometimes you do want to do it. So now we could use the Allegro native dialog system, which we used with that very first Allegro program just to see that Allegro had installed properly and stuff. But because that pops up a separate window, and that's typically not what we want to do, we usually want to give feedback on the display where we're showing the rest of the stimuli to the participant. So instead, what we're going to do is learn how to use fonts and display a message on the display in Allegro. All right, so fonts are a little bit of a hassle, but once you have them, they're not a hassle once you've put them in your program. But let's start. So one of the first things is we need to include two new headers. So we're going to pound include the Allegro 5 slash Allegro ttf.h. That's for TrueType font header. And we are going to pound include the Allegro 5 slash Allegro font header file, Allegro font.h. All right, keep a little space between our includes and our defines. And we also need to tell Allegro that we're doing this. So we're going to right click on our solution here, starter, come down to properties, and click on Allegro 5. Let's see, when you first open it, it'll probably look something like this, and it'll probably be up here. So you're going to click on Allegro 5, and you can see here, you'll probably have just blanks here because you haven't done anything. I've actually switched back and forth as I've been working through this code and making sure that it all worked and stuff. So now mine explicitly says no. Yours probably is just blank right here. But you are going to click on that, and you're going to tell it yes. Yes, I am using the TrueType font add-on, and I am using the oh, I turned off the primitives add-on. Goodness gracious. And the font add-on. Oh, so I turned off the wrong thing earlier to make this video. Anyway, so yours would have just been blank. You're going to say yes. So you want to be using the font add-on and the TrueType font add-on, both of those things. And certainly you want to be using the primitives add-on. Never should have turned that one off. Okay, apply. Okay. So we've got our included libraries, and we have let Visual Studio know what to expect. So now we need to declare a font. And so these are Allegro fonts, and they are pointers. So use your asterisk there, and we can just call it font. No reason not to. Font is not a reserved word, so we'll just name ours font. All right. Because this is an add-on, as with most Allegro add-ons, it needs to be initialized. So we do that for both the TTF and the font add-ons. So all underscore init underscore font underscore add-on, open close paren, semicolon. All right, similarly, all init TTF add-on, open close paren, semicolon. And now that will initialize these add-ons. And now I'm going to separate where we actually create the display, open the log file, all that stuff from the initializations a little bit in my code. And we now need to load, we need to load that font. So the font equals all load font. If you're wondering how I so amazingly have all of this stuff memorized, I don't. I have a cheat sheet right next to me. And I often have to look things up in the Allegro manual. Okay, so the font. Oh, I didn't mention this. Open sans, let me get this in here, and then I'll talk about the font. Regular.ttf. That's in quotation marks. The next argument is the size, 24. And the last argument is the flags. We don't have any flags, so we're just going to leave that null. Okay, and so that is loaded the font. Okay, let me do one last thing, and then I'll talk about where to get these fonts from and where to put them. When a font is just like, excuse me, like a display. So if you open one and then don't close it, it can cause memory leaks. So you want to make sure at the end all close font, and then tell it which font you want to close. We named ours font, so we're just going to close font. Okay, the fonts. Let's see, I think I have it here somewhere. Nope, I guess I got rid of it. Here. So here's just a website that has a bunch of free fonts. There's a bunch of these. You can just go on Google and Google free TrueType fonts or downloadable TrueType fonts, and then find a good one. So I like Open Sans. It's plain. It's easy to read. It's got a fairly good contrast to it and stuff. Don't get too fancy. You might think that oh, I want to get some really fancy font. Let me actually go to the home page of this one, and they've got a bunch of fancy ones that you can download, and you might think, oh, that looks cool. Well, it does look cool, but for research purposes, we almost always want the plainest and most easily readable thing we can. We don't want our participants to be distracted by the craziness of our font. So for research purposes, usually you're going to use the plainest font you can find. Okay, but anyway, so you can get these free fonts, you'll download them, and then you're going to download them to, let me show you where to put them. Not your debug folder for your program, which is actually, I know I have a font in there right now. That cost me a lot of time earlier because I had forgotten where I was supposed to put it. No, you put it here in the folder for the project. The project folder, not the folder with the executable itself. That is where Visual Studio is going to look for it. So there's my font right there. I just downloaded that off a free website, and that's the one that I'm going to use. You can use whatever font you want, but like I say, for research purposes, you really want a plain font, something that's just plain and simple and easy to read. All right, so we are now ready to use our fonts. So we are going to, one more thing. I guess we're not quite ready. Oh, yeah, we are ready. So we're going to create another function to give the feedback. So let's go up here to our function prototypes and start it there. And just for fun, to use a different kind, we could make this function of an int, as we've made our previous functions an int. But because we don't actually need it to return any value, let's just get some practice with a different kind of function, a void. So we're going to call it feedback, so void feedback, and then we need to pass it whether or not the response was correct or not. And we could just call it correct, but we've already used correct to refer to this idea in the trial function, or I'm sorry, in the evaluation function, trial eval function. So instead, I'm going to call it here correctness. And then I am also going to pass the Allegro font to this function. And this is the prototype, so I need a semicolon there. But then in the actual function declaration, I do not. Oops. So there I'm going to copy and paste it down here at the bottom. Oh, here, let me put a little note to myself. End of evaluate response. And a nice visual so that when I'm scrolling through, I can easily see where that function ends and the next one begins. And then put my void here, open and close bracket, and now we're ready to build this function. Now we are going to have to time the feedback. We don't want the feedback on forever, and we don't want it to just flash for 1/10 of a second, not enough time to read it. So, oops, got my all caps on. We're going to need a couple of doubles to time, and so I'll just call this one start time feedback, and then feedback duration as the benchmark, and I'll go ahead and set that one here, 1.0. And I'm going to need a color for my font, and I'll call it font color, and I'll go ahead and set that one with all map RGB, and we'll just make it the brightest we can make it, 255 on all cylinders. And I'm also going to need the background color, and I'll go ahead and set that one all map RGB, open paren, and 0 for all functions. And here, let me scroll over so you can see what's happening, because we don't want to forget our semicolon at the end of that line. Okay, so now we want this function to do something different if the correctness is 0, meaning it was an incorrect response, versus, so else if correctness equals 1, meaning a correct response. We want two different things in those two cases. And now comes the meat of the whole thing, the syntax to actually get a message sent out to the display. And that syntax is all draw text. And the first argument is the font we want to use. We called ours font. We're passing it to this function right here. The next is what color we want it to be, and we want it to be the font color that we just set. And the next two arguments are the x and y coordinates. I'm just going to hard code them in there, and I'm going to leave it to you as an exercise to make these instead parameters that would automatically configure or readjust if we changed the display size. Now, when we created our display, we created it 800 by 600, so halfway would be 400 and 300. Now, remember, we did this earlier in the book, if you're reading the book or taking the class, if not just in an earlier video. When we first started presenting stimuli on the screen, we learned how to use parameters here, variables here, rather than hard coding those numbers, so that if we ever did decide to change the size of a display, these things would change automatically. So I'm going to leave that to you to do on your own as an exercise. The next parameter is the alignment. We can align center, left, or right, and it's called Allegro, all caps, Allegro underscore align underscore, and then for now we are actually going to align center. And yes, that's the British spelling of center. Take my all caps off. Okay, and then the message that we want. So if its correctness is a 0, we want to display the message error. That is an error. All right, and I almost forgot my semicolon. Now let's just copy and paste that and just replace error with correct. Okay. And nope, we need to do a few more things here. Good thing I have my cheat sheet. Okay. We're not going to see this text as of right now, because what have we forgotten? We have not flipped the display. We need to flip the display, and that will put whatever we just drew here onto the display. And now we need to start our timer. So start time feedback. Remember, we're going to grab the current time with all get time. And then our while loop. So while all get time, which is continuing to get bigger and bigger, start time is now frozen at the value of all get time when that call happened, but now all get time continues to increment. So all get time minus start time feedback, that now becomes a difference, and it gets bigger and bigger, and we want this while loop to go on until that difference exceeds feedback duration. And open and close curly brackets. We don't need anything in those brackets, so I'm just going to leave them the way they are, because we're just timing while this text is on the screen. But at the end of it, we do want to do this. We want to do all clear to color and restore it to the back color. We want to do that so that those words, whatever message we had, isn't still on the screen when the next trial starts. So we go ahead and clear the screen here at the end. Okay, and I believe that should do it. Oh, I forgot something very important. We actually need to call this function if we're going to get any feedback. So we call it, this is the for loop, just to remind you where we're at. This is the for loop that is actually running our trials. And at the end of it, after whatever kind of trial got selected, we want to call feedback. And we want to feed it the trial accuracy. And this is the ith trial accuracy. And we want to feed it the font. Okay. Okay, so I forgot something super important. You guys probably saw it as I was doing it. I run through all of this, make sure everything works correctly, and then I have a cheat sheet in front of me. Even with all of that, I forgot in your function declaration and your prototype, you need to tell it what all of this stuff is, and I just put in correctness. You probably did too if you were just following me on the video, and if you're a naive programmer, so you probably made that same mistake because I made it. That's an int. Oh, goodness. Okay. And, okay. Int here. All right. And I also forgot as we were going through it, and now I can't remember if I went back and added this to the video or not, but we have to actually call this thing, right? Oh, yeah, I did add this to the video. So, yeah, we're good. Okay. So, let's see if now this thing is happy with us. Oh, yeah. There we go. Okay, I missed that one. There we go. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to make an error now on purpose. Yep, there we go. Yeah. All right, now we're getting feedback. Fantastic. Make one more error. Yeah, there you go. Oops, that one told me an error. Hey, that one I was right. Oh, I just didn't do it fast enough. These stimuli are coming pretty fast right now. We only have them on for a second, and then you only have a second to respond. And I'm trying to yap while I'm doing it. But anyway, you get the idea. It's working. Oh, my goodness. I couldn't, man alive, when I tried to run it, I just paused real quickly, make sure it runs. It didn't run. And I was like, oh, man, what did I do? So anyway, I want to leave that in there because, again, I want you to see even seasoned programmers make these mistakes all the time. And the key is compile early and often, and so that you don't have too much code to look through to find out what you did wrong. And it only took me about a minute to find out. I was giving me really weird errors like illegal use of void function, and I was like, this is not an illegal use of the void function. What are you talking about? That's craziness. But it was just because I had forgotten to tell it what this was. This was an integer. Goodness gracious. All right. Anyway, there you go. There you have it. This code works now. On to the next adventure.